Hey, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas. It's Saturday morning, my friend, and you are listening to Light Talk.
Good morning. This is Zach coming to you from Washington, D.C. And today we're talking about ending relationships with directors, designing tours using house gear, our favorite styles of theater, and the Super Bowl halftime show, all on Light Talk.
Hello, this is Jason coming to you from the Gateway to the West, St. Louis, Missouri, and today I am so happy and honored to be Lumen Brother of the Day and guest host of Light Talk.
And this is David coming to you from the beautiful Belmont Shore neighborhood of Long Beach, California. And if you don't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the Lumen Brothers! Woo. Yay! Welcome everyone to episode 307, and today is a very special episode of Light Talk, because today we welcome Jason Lawshe as an honorary Light Talk Lumen Brother. Jason is joining us today because he won the Great Light Talk Mystery Fez contest at last year's LDI. The grand prize, believe it or not, is being a guest host on our show. So it's about time we pay up. So Jason, welcome here. And Zach is actually going to tell our listeners a little bit about you.
Good morning. Jason Lawshe is a St. Louis-based production director and designer, an alumni of the Sargent Conservatory of Theater Arts at Webster University with a BFA in lighting design, and the technical director at the COCA Center of Creative Arts. Jason has designed for companies including Metro Theater Company, COCA, Lyric Rep, and Shakespeare Festival St. Louis. Some of his lighting design credits include Billy Elliot, Wonderland, and Four Little Girls, Last Stop on Market Street, and Ghost, and Love at the River's Edge. He was the lighting programmer for Shakespeare Festival's St. Louis production of King Lear. He has interned at Wolf Trap Opera in Washington, D.C., in my backyard, and served as assistant master electrician at Opera Theater St. Louis. Jason often refers to his tech table as his home, and he is passionate about making theater in all forms accessible to all people. Jason, welcome.
Welcome, Jason.
Thanks, friends. Like I said, I'm super duper happy to be here. I'm a long time binge listener. I listen, about every couple of months, but then I just listen to them all at once. And I'm sitting here wearing my Light Talks vest. My Light Talks mug is over here. Unfortunately, I haven't used my Light Talks shot glass yet today, but we'll see what the day holds.
It's early.
Oh, the day is young.
That's a mistake. You should always use that shot glass before you do one of our shows. I mean, that's something we do as a habit. Boy, man, Jason, thank you so much for being with us today. And we're sorry, it was really hard to get our schedules together, but I'm so glad that we did this before the beginning of our, seventh season?
Coming up.
Yes. Yeah. So, it's great to have you here, Jason. And Jason is going to be a host. He's co-hosting the show today. So we're just going to do a normal show. And we're all going to talk about things. And this is great because we always like to get different opinions. Something that Brackley talked about is getting more younger people. And I said younger people, not young people, on the show to get the new generation of designers. So hopefully this will be as interesting as I think it's going to be. But we're going to start off today with a little bit of news, Light Talk news. Well, Zach and Steve have some news about two very important American theater artists who we lost this past week.
And they're interestingly intertwined for their almost entire careers. So I'm going to talk about Eugene Lee. Eugene Lee was born on March 8th, 1939 in Beloit, Wisconsin. His professional career began in the 1960s, and he quickly became the resident designer for the legendary Trinity Rep in Providence, Rhode Island. After seeing Candide on Broadway, Lorne Michaels hired Lee as the production designer for Saturday Night Live way back when it premiered in 1975. He remained in the position until his death. The 48 years he spent working on the legendary sketch comedy show were more than anyone else in the production staff. Lee created sets for classic sketches, including Wayne's World, Church Lady, and more Cowbell, not to mention the many Broadway productions that came out of SNL, including Gilda Radner Live from New York in 1979, Colin Quinn's An Irish Wake in 1998, and Will Ferrell's You're Welcome, America in 2009. Lee's TV work also included production design for The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon and Late Night with Seth Meyers. He won 6 Emmy Awards for his work. Well known for his fondness for real textures and raw materials, Eugene Lee also won 3 Tony Awards for his set designs of Candide, Sweeney Todd, and Wicked. Other highlights of the 27 Broadway shows Lee designed include Merrily We Roll Along, Ragtime, Glengarry Glen Ross, and most recently Bright Star in 2016. Mr. Lee was known as a man of few words who loved the water. Director Oscar Eustis recalled that Mr. Lee took him out on Narragansett Bay on his sailboat when they were working on Trinity's production of A Long Day's Journey into Night in 1995. We spent a couple of hours on the water talking, but not referring to the play at all. And then he said, "It would be too bad if they actually left the stage when they say they are leaving," Mr. Eustis recalled. "That was our whole conversation, and then he delivered one of the most brilliant and beautiful designs I'd ever seen."
So, Steve, why don't you tell us a little bit about Adrian Hall? Because he's from Dallas, right? At least he was at the Theater Center for many, many years.
Sure. I mean, his name was Adrian Hall, and he would go on to become a rare thing for a boy from Van, Texas, population 800, by the way. One of America's foremost directors of theater. Adrian Hall led the Dallas Theater Center for 6 years, from 1983 to 1989. He died Saturday at his home in Van, Texas. During his time in Dallas, Adrian Hall had the Kalita Humphreys Theater reconfigured, established a professional resident acting company with 15 artists, pulled the DTC out of its commercial touring series at the Majestic Theater, and built the DTC's Arts District Theater designed by Saturday Night Live scenic designer Eugene Lee. Standing where the Winspear Opera House now is, the metal warehouse known as the Tin Shed planted the theater center in the then still unformed downtown Arts District. It was Hall's aim for the future. Where the people are, Hall said, that's where the theater's got to be. His longest and closest collaborator, designer Eugene Lee, died exactly 48 hours later in New England. Lee's passing was widely noted, of course, because of Saturday Night Live, an Adrian Hall set, if there ever was one, as well as his Tony Awards for Candide, Wicked, and Sweeney Todd. The 70-plus sets and the 2 theaters that Lee built for Hall went largely unmentioned. "It's a miracle we met. He saved my life," Lee once said. "He took me in. He's some kind of unusual genius. Pretty pictures don't interest me." Adrian wasn't interested in pretty pictures either. Space interests me. Process interests me. Adrian always had principles behind what he did. He was wildly enthusiastic. In all those years, Adrian never had an office in the building. He never held a production meeting. The world at large has absolutely no knowledge of Adrian's work. In my case, Lee said, people know me because of my Broadway and television work. The real work, the work with Adrian, nobody knows anything about that. Lee and Hall also created some of DTC's boldest, most striking productions. These included a sweeping adaptation of Robert Penn Warren's novel All the King's Men, and a staging of Shakespeare's The Tempest, in which the entire wooden stage could rock back and forth like a ship in a storm. For 3 of those 6 years in the 80s, Hall simultaneously led the Trinity Repertory Company in Providence, Rhode Island, which he helped establish in 1961. Soon after his departure from Dallas, he took refuge at San Diego's esteemed Old Globe Theater, where Tony Award-winning artist Jack O'Brien hired him as fast as he could to direct Shakespeare's Measure for Measure. In its story about Hall's reemergence in San Diego, the Los Angeles Times noted, "For years, Adrian Hall could be counted on to deliver the unexpected. His actors might spray the patrons with water, might fire off a cannon or 2, might smack the bloody side of meat in a play about the Manson murders, might perform The Visit in an old railroad depot. Adrian Hall, the boy from Van, Texas, was an American original, and we won't see his like again. Rest in peace, Adrian."
Thank you, Steve and Zach. Let's get on with the show. So Steve has our first question of the day.
Richard from L.A. writes, How do you break off a professional relationship with a director who you do not want to work with anymore?
This is such an LA question.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the thing here is there's always this implication that maybe it's a bad thing to break off. Maybe it's not. Maybe so it's not like the director is yelling at you or you're yelling at the director. Maybe it's just a type of work you're not interested in pursuing anymore. Maybe that work with that director and that company is simply not as satisfying. Maybe you're not earning what you really are worth. Maybe communication is lacking. I think, when we have these kind of first dates with directors and theater and opera and dance companies, and it doesn't work out, I think the most important thing is to be transparent. What you don't want to do is ghost the person. You want to be professional and you want to be courteous. And I would say you want to take responsibility for why you're ending the relationship. And again, it doesn't have to be something bad. It's you're interested in narrative work. I'm interested in abstract work. I think it's important, if asked, you help with the transition to another designer. Maybe the director says, "Oh, it's too bad. I enjoyed our work. Can you recommend someone I might want to look at?" I mean, the last thing you want to do is burn that bridge and just not tell anybody you're not coming back for show number 2 and just leave them all hanging. So I think it's important to be mature about it and honest about it. There are probably no villains. It's not a direction you want to go anymore. Zach, you've certainly ghosted thousands of directors in your day. How do you handle this?
Well, this is really a really interesting question. I think, I had an agent earlier in my career who his advice was always like, you tell them that unfortunately you're just not available. You always leave, what's that saying? You leave the cage door open. Because there are so many reasons why you may want to go in a different direction than the director that you're working with is, like you said, it could be a taste thing. It could be, that type of work. It could be a location-based thing. But you never know if a project that you really do want to work on is going to come back around and you still want to be asked. But I think that, a great way to approach it is to just not be available. I think that, everybody understands that we're all working freelance designers for the most part, and that, we want to give each project the attention that we feel it deserves. And I mean, the reality is we would be doing a disservice if we're not able to do that. And in this case, we might not be able to provide a project with the attention it deserves because we personally just don't want to be there, be a part of it. So it's challenging, but I think it's always good to sort of not only keep the door open for future collaborations, but also to, like you said, be that guy who says, I really can't do this, but, I have a student or a young associate that I could sort of mentor through the project for you. Or like, here's another designer that I checked in with and they're available and interested too, so because we work in our business is a business of referrals. And so the last thing you want is somebody who's not going to, throw your name into the hat, even if it's not for your project. So if you're that guy who everybody appreciates because either you're honest and transparent or you provide an alternative that is a good alternative, then people are going to remember that. That goes a long way.
Yeah, my thoughts were similar. My first thought was there's no reason why it has to be a big sit you down at a coffee shop and say, I no longer want to work together. Like, I think it's just, right. I'm busy here, someone else. Because like you said, never close the door if you don't. And I guess maybe this question is going towards like, maybe you want to close the door, which is a whole nother conversation, I guess. But I think that there's no reason. It doesn't necessarily, at the end of the day, even if this person is, your favorite, you were really close and you got drinks after every rehearsal. At the end of the day, they're asking you to do a job. If you can't do it, you can't do it. So it doesn't have to be, a big hoopla.
Yeah, it's not like you're breaking up with a girlfriend or a boyfriend, but I'll tell you one thing, sometimes it is.
I think sometimes you leave the door open there too.
Yes. Yeah, leaving the door open. That's okay. Yeah, sometimes you do, I guess.
I also approached it from as someone whose career is just getting rolling, feeling sometimes like I'm too new to cut off directors yet. So I appreciate the leaving the door open because, jobs, at this point in my career, I like I have thousands of offers. So I'm going to.
Yeah. There are directors who I just stopped working with because it was just torture. Either their personality was horrible, or it's that they are just terrible directors. And it's really hard to have a good time when your director is just incompetent.
Yeah, we sometimes call that the directors that has emperors wearing new clothes syndrome. That everybody seems to be thinking that this guy is great, and you're just like,
what the hell?
Are these really his ideas? Like, is this seriously what he wants me to do?
So I've also turned down a director, and then a year later been like, whatever it was, why the first time I turned them down has passed, or we've repaired our relationship, wherever it may be, and I'm actually willing to work with them again. So you just never know.
Cindy from Oregon writes, I've been asked to design a small tour using mostly house gear, and we only have a few hours of load-in and load-out time before each show. Any tips or tricks for pulling this off? This is a really good question because there are so many factors involved here. I mean, factor number one is you really want to please the artist or artists, the director, the production manager, whatever, all of the people involved in this tour. You want to make it look like it's their own bespoke design, even though you're beholden to whatever gear you're going to be given at each venue. Because and this kind of ties into the question before. No director wants to hear what your problems are with it. They just want to see your design. They don't want to hear what the problem is. So one of the things that I would say here is if you can try to find out what the house gear, what the rep plot is for all of these places in advance. Find out what are the things that they all have in common. Oh, they all have a cyc. They all have an RP screen. They all have, a ground row or footlights or whatever it is. And then start to build your design based on what those commonalities are. And then plan ahead. So, okay, so I'm going to have 3 hours. I have 2 guys. What can I realistically do with these 2 guys in this place? Because I also have to put it back when I'm done. So a lot of this is really just planning ahead, looking at, when you're doing a tour, you look at what's the biggest venue that I'm going to be in, what's the smallest venue that I'm going to be in, who has the most equipment, who has the least equipment, what is there room in, the bus or the truck or the van or whatever I have to bring a thing, maybe, like is the singer going to be using a moving light as a pillow on the tour bus because that's the only place you have to stash it. So that's what I would say when you're looking at this kind of thing is try to look at it in a big picture way first and then figure out what you're going to do in each venue to accomplish this big picture vision. What do you guys think?
Well, it's interesting because this always brings me back to like Steve Shelley's book, The Practical Guide of Stage Lighting. I have promoted this book for many, many years. And in his first chapter, it's all about limitations. Understand your limitations. And that's exactly what you were talking about, Zach. It's a limitation, of how many hours, what's the size of the theater. That's so, so important. Jason, have you faced this issue before?
I have not, but my first thought was, oh boy. But my second thought was the word mostly. And I'm like, so we're using mostly the house gear, but what can I bring? Because I'm thinking, what can I throw on the deck just to give me something that's always going to be there?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That's my first thought went to, but
that's a great thought.
Yeah, I would definitely write live talks with this question because I'd be a little stumped.
Steve, how about you?
I think what you have to do if you're in this situation is you've got to be able to walk into the space and make an assessment in 15 minutes. And you've got to know what your priorities are. And in those 15 minutes, it's like, I have to have a light on the microphone. I've got to have something on the drummer, whatever. And then stop worrying about what you don't have. just what are my priorities to get this show up tonight? And that could be a dance company. That could be anything. What are my priorities, and forget everything else and just, charge forward.
I mean, sometimes it could be liberating to really have to have restrictions like that. I worked on one show where the lighting designer had basically an endless budget when we first put it up. And there was a zillion and one moving lights, tons of crazy looks and all kinds of stuff. And then after about a year, to cut down on running costs, they got rid of almost all the moving lights, and it became a much better show, because then he really had to think about, with what I have left, what can I really do? What can I create here? So
I'm doing that very thing in an hour. I'm walking out of my office, getting a car, going to an opera house, because my production is sandwiched in between two other things. What can I adapt from the lights hanging in the air to get me in the door as fast as I can, so I don't lose most of my day stripping and hanging a whole new rig?
It forces you to be a much more creative thinker in a lot of ways.
So Jason from his home office writes, have you ever been told your show was too dark and you just didn't see it? How do you please your director while also upholding your artistic integrity?
Well, Jason, is this the Jason from St. Louis?
Maybe.
Is the director listening?
Props to you.
Not.
Okay, well then let's get down to business.
I like the way you phrased that question. The director says the show is just too dark and you don't see it.
That's right. I don't see it either. All right. So, wow. Anyone want to answer this question?
I'm going to let the lighting guys answer this first.
Lighting guys.
I'm getting ready to premiere brand new work. And the choreographer looked at me and said, sometimes a suggestion of light is all I need. So maybe that's the person you want to work for. I can't make it dark enough. So, I mean, it's just a conversation with the director. What is that level? If I'm struggling and I can't see the people on stage, I do kind of have a tendency to lose interest in what's happening up there. But I think there are times in which cues can be very dark. You just have to pick your battles and your moments and where you think it's essential that it is shadowy.
Yeah. And also remember, and we've said this before on the show, that it's not necessarily an issue of intensity. It's an issue of contrast. And contrast is more important than anything else. And sometimes people, you could have all the intensity in the world. Pumping all this light from the front, but all it does is that your irises close up a bit and you're still having a hard time seeing because everything is bright. It's best always to leave a large range of intensity in different parts of the atmosphere so that things that are brighter than others seem actually much brighter than they really are, because that's the way our mind works. This is the way, we see things. So sometimes it's best to take light away than to add light. And this is something I always tell my students, is when they're having a problem in the theater and it's really super bright, you really can't focus on anything, and the director is complaining that she can't see it. And I have done this. Actually, in the profession, I've done this. Sometimes it's best to turn everything off and start again. Just, don't just take out one channel at a time. Take them all out. Of course, say, going dark on stage, and everybody knows. You take the lights, go out, and then bring up the most important light of that moment, right? And then see, what else do you need? And sometimes that's all you need, because now you've got this great, great, great intensity. I can't tell you how many times the directors turned to me after I've done that and said, that's it. That's exactly what we need right there. Stop. And I'm saying, yeah, stop. Okay, great. And then the director says, I can use this light. I'll just reblock it. I'll reblock this moment. And that's what good directors do, by the way. So don't feel that someone's criticizing you or thinking they're a bad lighting designer because they're saying, I can't see. Just find a different way of doing it. And that's usually the best way of doing it. Just find that most important light.
I would say, first and foremost, earlier in my career, I was told every show was too dark because projectors just weren't bright enough to fight with lighting. But then we got LED walls, and then everyone asked us to turn it way, way, way down. But I think that the reality of it is that, as with any artistic decision that you make, I think that a good director is usually willing to have a conversation with you and give you the opportunity to defend your decision as well. So, it sounds like from this question that what you're saying is this was my artistic choice, and I think that I'm putting up a good look there, and the director is questioning it. And, hopefully you're working with a director where they'll at least give you an opportunity to explain what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish, why you're doing it the way you're doing it. And let's take at least one look at it before we abandon this look, because maybe there is some merit to it. And maybe, taking one pass through at this level is a way to have a more informed way to augment it. Maybe all it really needs is a little more side light or something like that to help sculpt bodies or something like that. But I think, I've worked with some directors who they love to challenge you, like almost to play devil's advocate, because they just want to make sure that you're confident in your decisions. They're not really trying to tell you they don't like what you have. They just want to see that you're serious about your artistic intentions. And so I think if you understand what you're trying to accomplish, you should at least try to have a conversation about it. A short, quick one, because there's not a lot of time in tech. But, but if you can defend your idea, then I think, they should hopefully honor your idea by giving you a chance to see it.
I think whomever asked this question has found great insight in your answers.
Oh, wow. Great insight.
Right. We can send an anonymous transcript.
And we get immediate feedback. I love it. Most people tell us we don't know what the hell we're talking about. But they usually do those in letters and emails.
Yes. All right. Well, you are listening to Light Talk, and today we are sponsored by
the 21st Century Schizoid Corporation. Do you work with annoying directors who insist on being on headset? Well, for those with this unfortunate fate, the 21st Century Schizoid Corporation brings you the Not So Clearcom. The Not So Clearcom is a special production table headset made just for those insane control freaks. That's right, those damn directors who just love to be in control. No more problems with language translation. For international directors who do not know English or have substance abuse problems and mumble their unintelligible comments, our patented artificial intelligence technology has a very special chip that learns what your director really wants and translates it to you in a language that the lighting designer and stage manager understands. For especially annoying directors, or if you and the stage manager want to talk in private, the Not So Clearcom features a secret software command that will have their headset automatically translate what you are saying to a dialect that is similar to Pig Latin. When the director becomes abusive, the failsafe switch will activate a 120 decibel high-pitched scream that is so loud and annoying, the space aliens on Jupiter can hear it. And if the director blames you for damaging their hearing, no problem. Just blame it on the sound technician. But that's not all. Our Not So Clearcom Deluxe model features subliminal messaging technology that will subconsciously send messages to the director, such as, be nice to the actors, think before you speak, and hire Jason to light your next Broadway show. So make working with jerk directors the best move of your career. Buy the 21st Century Schizoid Corporation's The Not So Clearcom. The entire company will thank you.
That one brings back memories.
Does it come in double muff or just single muff?
It comes in, yes, right. Only comes in double muff. So they can't really hear you at all.
I worked with one director who not only was on comm, but he wanted the light cues for his script as well.
Oh.
So he could say, hey, how about 233? Yeah. Let's look at that.
Oh, boy.
I don't mind that. I mind when they ask for the magic sheet. That's when you know you're in trouble.
And now, back to Light Talk.
Well, the sound of those sex-starved monkeys in the background means that it's time for Let's Talk About. And today's Let's Talk About is all about Da-da-da, the Super Bowl halftime show. All right, the Super Bowl halftime show just this past weekend. And we're going to sort of review it from lighting designers and projection designers' POVs. So what did you guys think? You all saw it, and I'm sure you've heard a lot of the hubbub about it. And it's really quite an interesting use of technology that we're going to talk about in a second. But just off the top, what do you think? Did you enjoy the halftime show? Do you think it was great entertainment? And what about the design?
Well, I just want to say, I think all those guys playing football got in the way. So like the first 30 minutes was like a pain in the ass. And then there was like a really great show. And then they came back out again. And I was like, what's going on? Get the opening act off the stage.
Yeah, well, it's time to go to the bathroom, I guess. So what do you think about Rihanna's performance? Let's start just with the basic show itself, and then we'll talk about the tech.
The pre-recorded audio did an excellent job.
Yes, that was probably the worst example of lip syncing I've ever seen in my life. But to be honest, they always lip sync these things.
They always have the track. There has only been a couple acts that have refused. I mean,
that's right.
The Rolling Stones refused. Prince refused.
The Who.
Yeah,
The Who refused.
They're talking about a lot of money and a big show, and it's pretty rough if your mic goes out and your Prince standing there. So the
and you're live.
That track is we've grown to expect that.
Yeah,
the thing is,
I think we're in a post lip sync society at this point now. We accept it as just part of performance. It's a post Milli Vanilli society.
I've seen the show from a lot of different angles on TikTok, actually. And on TikTok, in the stadium, you can hear her singing that we could not hear at home. Because I also watched it. It was like, come on, it's all backing track. But in person, people could hear her.
Yes, and just to clarify that, the artist can sing over this click track. They can sing, and they can sing as much as they want or as little as they want. But that track is playing for the obvious reasons that if something goes wrong,
well, it's not just that. I think
a disaster.
It's the entire show is timed out to like the nanosecond between the technology and all the broadcasts elements and the scenic elements, and so that show has to last as long as it's supposed to last without any hiccups because there are $1 million commercials bumped up against the front and back of it. And if those guys don't get to run their commercials, there's a big problem. So that's why it's like, a military precision procedure to put up any Super Bowl halftime show. There's some really great videos online of how they put all the platforms together in advance during the commercial break before the performance. But one of the things that I read about that was really interesting this year is that a lot of attention's being paid to the grass, the quality of the grass and the dirt and the surface, and that a lot of how this show was designed with the lightweight platforms and the flying platforms was how do we preserve the grass so that it's safe to play on during the game. And so it's interesting, like we were talking about earlier with limitations. So you're presented with this limitation. You can't just have, 400 people on the field in a giant, multi-ton steel set. So what can you do with those limitations? Bring it up in the air.
Yeah. But that's what Bruce did.
Yeah. And that stadium has a massive truss that can support that stuff easily.
Right.
So they were able to take advantage of that.
There's a great article in Wired magazine, and we're going to post it on the Light Talk Facebook group page. It's an interview with Bruce Rogers, who basically runs Tribe, who have done like the last 30 or 40 Super Bowls. And I actually had met Bruce many years ago out here in LA. And it was when they were doing The Who. I'll never forget, because he showed me one of those time-lapse thing that he took, and he told me the story. And I told it before, I'm not going to waste time telling it again. But he said that because of the grass, they basically came up with this idea to keep as many people off the grass as possible, which is a great idea. I thought the execution was awesome, personally, to have those flying platforms. Of course, I was saying, oh, I guess we don't need railings anymore, but they were all attached to the platform. They all had tethered. They were all tethered to the platform. The camera angles were so superb that they sort of did the design around the camera angles because they knew they had that flying camera. What a great lesson in camera angles. If you just watch that halftime show, because the handheld stuff that was coming in, the stuff that was flying in, and just beautifully done.
Right.
I was amazed and very impressed with the design of the show.
If you ask who won the Super Bowl, the answer is Tate Navigator, which is the system that controlled all the platforms and the cameras that move around.
The cinematography is definitely what I thought was probably the most impressive out of the whole show.
Yeah.
And I think that the whole concert was a really good example of how obstacles can create these really inventive solutions that probably would have never been thought of if we hadn't been told to stay off the grass or else, right? But I was super excited for the Rihanna concert that had an opener with some football and a closer with some football. And I think that in the moment I was like, this is really cool, but I don't know. But I've watched it about 10 times since, and now I'm here for it. I think it was really good ultimately.
Yeah, and no video in this show. No video, no projections, and they weren't missed.
They had LEDs inside those platforms, like 512 in each one, but they weren't really video, or maybe, who knows? We don't know how they triggered these.
No imagery.
What content they had, but it was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
It was impressive. And Al Gurdon's lighting, as usual, was superb, fit perfectly with the music, supported the dancing. There was only one part I didn't like, and that was the costumes.
You didn't like the marshmallow people?
Oompa Loompa costumes.
Because he lives in California, he doesn't like jackets.
I don't like jackets. You got to get all that stuff off, right? And the hoods and all that weird stuff going on, and they were all in white, and which is great. It was a bold color palette. It was just white and red, basically.
Your
it was
favorite
white
color
and
is
red.
white.
That was it. White. For lighting designers, white is great, right? You can change it any color you want. And Al did manipulate that and used it. It was fantastic. I love his lighting. I'm a huge Al Gurdon fan. Everything about that was fabulous, but I just was turned off by the costumes. I mean, she looked great, by the way. And, she was like 3 months pregnant. She looked fantastic. And she's up there
I wouldn't go on there, and I'm not pregnant at all.
Right.
I'm calling shenanigans on this.
Shenanigans, not bupkis.
But I also have Zach. I want to point out, and you know this, I want to point out that at the countdown to go to the Super Bowl halftime show, I mean, you're right, it is absolutely structured. But about 45 seconds before they go live with the Super Bowl show, the director says, do I need to go to a 30-second commercial? And that's, everybody checks in and goes, no, no, no. And there was one voice going, yes, yes. So they can delay the opening by 30 seconds, but no more. And once they start that countdown, it's like they're counting down and the ship's going to take off no matter what's happening. But shenanigans on the costumes. Oh, everything was perfect. Everything was perfect about this show. The costumes were gorgeous. The lighting was gorgeous. And the only thing I saw when I saw that show was class. And she doesn't need anything. I mean, admittedly, it's a flying platform. But it was just her in this space, and these people are moving, and everything was perfect. And I think the Marshmallow People are a tribute to a very beautiful singer who is 3 months pregnant. Oh. I think there was a little tongue-in-cheek going on there.
Really? You think they did it because she was pregnant? Are you serious?
I think they might. I'd be interested to hear what the costume designer has to say.
I would too.
I think there was a little tip of the hat there.
Apparently in rehearsal, she wore that big red jacket closed, so even the dancers didn't even know that she was pregnant. That was part of the big reveal.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Maybe.
Big reveal.
I mean, there were definitely many cultural statements made.
Yeah.
And the dancers all went, when did that happen?
What do y'all think about the when we do Super Bowl halftime shows in stadiums that aren't closed? Just like like this show happened in kind of twilight, so it wasn't horrible. But there's some shows where it's like, I think last year was broad daylight, so it was like, where's the lighting?
Yeah.
Oh, go back to that Michael Jackson halftime show where they've got him in the end zone and it's 12 o'clock in the afternoon.
That was stupid. Yeah, that's not a good thing.
Well, if you really want to see, you can go back before they started having like all these awesome bands and singers where like they had a Disney Indiana Jones halftime show once before.
A Bob Yanni production?
Yeah. So
the history of the halftime shows is fascinating.
First, they had marching bands. They actually had marching bands for the first. I was alive during that time, and I actually went to Super Bowl III, I think it was, the one the Jets won. Anyway, they had marching bands, and then they had Up With People, which was this international group of homogenized Disney type of entertainment you can find. And Up With People, they did their thing, okay? They did it for like 3 years. And then they started to get some bands. Now, do you guys know who the first band to play, the first pop band to play was? And I'm trying to think of, I think it was the Beastie Brothers or the Backstreet Boys. The Backstreet Boys were the first pop band to play the Super Bowl.
it's the Beastie Boys, by the way.
Is it the Beastie Boys? Didn't I say the Beastie Boys?
Not Beastie Brothers. Unless
Beastie
that's some
Brothers.
other group that I don't know about.
The Beastie
Jason
Gentlemen.
is now embarrassed for you. Yeah, those Beastie Brothers were out there, and
Right. You do get more conservative when you get older.
and then they brought on Diana Ross and the sisters. I
Diana
think.
Ross
Diana
and the
Ross
sisters
was
were
cool
there.
because she got in a helicopter at the end and flew away.
Yeah, she did. And that was really great. But no, and Bruce Springsteen was great. I mean, there have been a lot of really good Super Bowl halftime shows. But I must tell you, ranking them all, I would put this near the top. I really would, because I thought that the whole design was extremely elegant. And I think Steve said this. It was very
Agreed.
elegant.
Yeah,
and it solved the problem. It's like, okay, how do we solve this problem? And they came up with this brilliant design.
They really did.
And she was great. She delivered. She delivered that show. Whether it was lip synced or not, she delivered it. She performed it. And that the end was brilliant. And there was one little thing that happened at the end. I don't know if you guys remember this, but she was flown out way high. And she was, you know, they had that flying camera right next to her. And then they had another shot. It was a shot from above because they were shooting all the aerial fireworks.
The fireworks.
And that camera had to fly out for the last shot. Right? And this was the only mistake I saw all night with the camera work, which was absolutely brilliant in direction and all that, is that camera was late to fly out and they had this far shot.
So for you people who can't see this, David is acting out the Super Bowl halftime show.
Solid.
Arms are waving. He's pointing at cameras. This is the most visually descriptive thing I've ever seen. I'm sorry no one else can see it.
Maybe we should just do the video this time. We'll just post the video. But then they had this far shot, and she's on the camera, and you see the shadow go up. And I thought that her body came out of the costume and flew up like it was an ascension of Christ or something like that. It was unbelievable. I'm saying, how did they do this? She came right out of her costume because you still see the costume there. And then I realized, no, that's the camera flying out.
Just the camera.
Okay, I'm calling shenanigans again. You started
double shenanigans.
this whole yes. You started this whole conversation by saying, it's a second best Super Bowl show. And then you just had a stroke talking about how wonderful it was. Who is the number one halftime show if it wasn't what you just saw?
Prince.
Beyonce 2013.
That's easy. Prince, no doubt.
He made it rain, literally.
I'm gonna say it's a toss-up.
Speaking of we're talking all about the grass and the limitations. It's funny because I watched it with my 10-year-old and he asked me, why do they have a concert in the middle of a football game like this? And I said, because otherwise people are going to tune to another channel. It's to keep the viewers on the hook.
Yeah.
I call shenanigans on you.
Shenanigans again.
Did you see the final numbers of people who watched the Super Bowl?
It was like the highest in 5 years, right?
But it went up
But
just
not the
for
highest
Rihanna.
ever.
What? How many people watched the halftime show?
Don't I only know four.
About a quarter of a million more people. Yes, they watched the Super Bowl, but about a quarter of a million or so more people tuned in just to see her, and then they turned the television off.
Yeah.
They went,
And that's too bad because it may have been the best played Super Bowl game I've ever seen.
It was a fantastic game.
I don't know. There was some questionable call towards the end.
Oh, so you want to talk football? Well, it looks like we may have to extend this episode about 30 minutes
No,
then.
I think I smell the shenanigans coming.
Let me say that questionable call.
That questionable call. The reason that it was not a questionable call was because even the broadcast booth said, well, technically it was the correct call, but they should just let them play the game. Well, maybe I go over and punch Patrick Mahomes in the face, and they go, "Oh, just let him play the game." No, it's a rule. The rule was broken, and they got busted.
Exactly. It happens. This is football. It happens.
It's not that stinking hockey stuff that you like so much.
Hockey? Are we talking hockey now? Okay, let's finish this segment up. Congratulations to everyone involved in this fantastic show. Congratulations to everyone at Tribe. Congratulations, of course, to Al Gurdon, who, again, did a fantastic job. And congratulations to Bruce Rogers for keeping it all together and doing another amazing show.
And Rihanna.
Oh, yeah, and congratulations to Rihanna, too. You were terrific. Yes, thank you. So Jason has the last question of the day.
Awesome. Gene from LA writes, what styles of theater excite you as a lighting designer? And my go-to is always musical theater. I just love music and I love lighting design. And it's just a good combination of the two with also some storytelling in there. And I just love it. I am a drama and contrast and beams of movers going through the air and people in spots and all that jazz. I just love me a good musical.
I'll jump in next. I truly believe, hear me out. I truly believe that whatever I'm doing at that moment is the best thing on the planet. So every type of theater excites me. Every time I walk in there, I'm like a Labrador. Where's the squirrel? Where's the squirrel? That director, that cast, the set designer, the costume designer, I'm in it with them, and it is the most exciting, wonderful thing ever. And I'm always sad when opening night comes and I have to stop.
Definitely think it's important to find joy in every style of theater that you do. Otherwise, why are we doing this? But yeah.
Well, I like it all also, but obviously opera and musicals. That's where I started in music, and that's where I'll probably end.
I would say, for the most part, I would answer musicals. For the most part, I would answer whatever the project is that's next is what excites me most. Mm-hmm. But I will admit, like you can see behind me, there's a poster for 2 plays in rep that I did on Broadway with Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen, and it was definitely not a musical. And anything that those 2 guys do, it would excite the hell out of me. If they said, we're going to read the script to today's Light Talk, it would be the most amazing performance you've ever heard.
Who would do you, Stewart or Ian?
I think Ian.
Okay.
But I think really what excites me is seeing people who are like at the top of their game, pouring their hearts out into creating art for others to see.
You know who would play me? Larry David. Absolutely.
That tracks.
So, guys, I think we've come to the end of this crazy show. Boy, that was a ride. That was great. And Jason, you were amazing. Thank you so much for being with us today. You are a great guy, really smart and very, very funny.
Yeah. You don't have to wear the fez next time.
Thank you all for having me. This has been so much fun. Honestly, a dream come true. I've been, trying not to fangirl this whole time, but I'm still fangirling a little bit. So it's going to be, it's been quite the ride. But thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Anytime you want to come back on the show, just give Steve a call, send him an email, and we would love to have you back because you have a lot to say and we think it's a very important point of view. So that's about it, guys. And just remember, I just don't want to hear any more shit about that defensive holding penalty, okay? Okay. Well, the rocking sounds of the Luminoids tells us that once again, you've spent another morning listening to Light Talk. You can hear our show on just about every podcast site out there. Check out our website at lighttalk.org and be sure to follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our podcast. That way you will not miss a second of Light Talk insanity.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast. However,
If you do decide to litigate, the Snoop Group, with the legal team of Sparks, Burnout, and Chase, will defend us until our retirement funds are depleted.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers, coming to you from Long Beach, Washington, D.C., St. Louis, and the Republic of Texas.
And be sure to join us next week when we talk about more lighting shenanigans and serve you more of our casserole of nonsense.
Light Talk, broadcasting questionable lumen knowledge and humor around the world.
So we'll see you all next Saturday morning. Bye-bye from Light Talk.
Toodles.